The U.S. is suspending a decades-long nuclear arms treaty with Russia. The Trump administration says Moscow has been violating the pact for years. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made the announcement earlier this morning.
Russia's violation puts millions of Europeans and Americans at greater risk. It aims to put the United States at a military disadvantage, and it undercuts the chances of moving our bilateral relationship in a better direction. It's our duty to respond appropriately. When an agreement is so brazenly disregarded and our security is so openly threatened, we must respond. We did that last December when the United States, with strong support from all of our NATO allies, formally declared Russia in material breach of the treaty. I also then provided notice that unless Russia returned to full and verifiable compliance within 60 days, we would suspend our obligation under that treaty. We provided Russia an ample window of time to mend its ways and for Russia to honor its commitment. Tomorrow that time runs out. Russia has refused to take any steps to return real and verifiable compliance over these 60 days. The United States will therefore suspend its obligations under the INF Treaty effective February 2nd. We will provide Russia and the other treaty parties with formal notice that the United States is withdrawing from the INF Treaty effective in 6 months, pursuant to Article 15 of the treaty. Russia has jeopardized the United States' security interest, and we can no longer be restricted by the treaty while Russia shamelessly violates it.
Earlier, I spoke with State Department reporter Christina Ruffini. She was at Secretary Pompeo's announcement.
So this is a treaty that has actually been around longer than most of Americans have been alive. It was signed in 1987, and it was a landmark nuclear arms anti-proliferation treaty. It was between Gorbachev and Reagan, and basically the idea was if you limited these short-range missiles, it made the world a little safer and gave Russia and the U.S. a little more time in case, they saw an incoming missile and thought, okay, we need to respond. We're trying to avert nuclear war here. So that was the idea. But in the last couple of years, the U.S. has been saying over and over again that Russia has been in non-compliance with this treaty. There's a specific ground-based missile system that they've activated that they say isn't in violation. The U.S. has said over and over it is, and they need to remedy it. They gave Russia a 60-day ultimatum and said, you need to come into compliance or we're going to get out of that treaty. That deadline ends on Saturday. And today, Secretary Pompeo said we're going to start the process for the U.S. to withdraw. This will be a 6-month timeline, at the end of which we will officially leave this agreement unless Russia changes course.
So I know somebody in the audience, one of the reporters, asked about whether or not there was a concern that this could restart the arms race.
I mean, right, that is, it's interesting to reverse an anti-proliferation treaty while at the same time to try to pursue anti-nuclearization on the Korean Peninsula, right? So in one case, we're saying, well, this isn't working, we're not going to do this anymore, and in other areas, other arenas, we're trying to get rid of nuclear weapons. Secretary Pompeo said the problem is that when you reach these agreements, if only one side is agreeing to it, then it's not worth the piece of paper it's written on, so why bother being in it? And it's limiting the U.S.'s ability to have these kinds of weapons ourselves, which they think is a risk to national security.
I thought the fact that the Secretary of State sort of paused in his announcement to thank NATO ally members was quite interesting. Not just thank them for everything that they've done, but to sort of spell out that the NATO allies have been important to American security, and specifically that the president is grateful for them. I thought it was very interesting because, as we know, Christina, the president has floated the idea of pulling the U.S. out of NATO.
Right. However, NATO did issue a communique earlier, late last year, saying that they did think Russia needed to get in line with this. And I think it's a fine line to walk because Europe is at the center of this. The idea of this treaty originally was to take Europe out of the firing zone and make it so that you couldn't be targeted with these short-range ICBMs. So they're really at the center of this, and they want to make sure that Europe is with the U.S. when they make this decision that essentially takes away the treaty that was meant to protect their territory and their assets.
Well, I'm sure Russia and Vladimir Putin will be responding to this sometime today, and so we'll be on the lookout for that. All right, Christina Ruffini, thank you so much.